Welcome. My name is Markus Wesaw, and I will be your facilitator for this Hazard Communication and Global Harmonization System presentation on Appendix A Health Hazard Classifications. This presentation will survey the 10 health hazard classifications under Hazard Communication GHS, their meanings, and how they fit into hazard communication. If you have any questions or comments, my contact information is listed on the screen. The primary objective we aim to cover with this video presentation pertains to the 10 health hazard classifications. Specifically, the last bullet point listed on your screen describes the 3 hazard classifications within the Hazard Communication GHS standards. We will be addressing the health hazard classifications in this module, and the idea is to cover the material in more depth to provide a greater understanding of Hazard Communication GHS. Because I feel it is important to have a good foundation set in place prior to delving into the subject matter pertaining to the health hazards and how are they classified in Hazard Communication GHS, we will first review the 4 chemical routes of entry. Chemicals are able to enter into the body via inhalation, contact or absorption, ingestion, and injection. At the time of this recording, these 4 chemical routes of entry are widely accepted and agreed upon by toxicologists and safety professionals alike. Inhalation will be the first route of entry we will discuss. The respiratory system is by far the most vulnerable to chemicals for a wide variety of reasons. Firstly, chemicals in the form of particulates, mists, dust, fumes, vapors, and gases can easily be breathed in by employees in the workplace, and these chemicals have the potential to get into the bloodstream or otherwise negatively impact how a person breathes. Anytime an employee recognizes an inhalation hazard within the workplace, special care and attention should be dedicated to abating this hazard as soon as possible. Inhalation hazards present a significant risk to employee health. Contact, dermal, or absorption is the second route of entry we will discuss. You may see either contact, dermal, or absorption listed as a route of entry on a chemical label or safety data sheet. It is important to note that although you may see either of these terms, they mean the same thing. Chemicals have the potential, depending upon their properties, of entering the body via contact with the skin. Gases or liquids can permeate the surface of the outer layer of skin called the epidermis. Chemicals with solvent properties, such as methanol, can easily penetrate the skin and find their way into the bloodstream. Many chemical gases can do the same thing. For example, tear gas can stay on the skin after an exposure and irritate a person many hours later if the chemical is not removed properly. There are 2 types of ingestion hazards as a chemical route of entry. The first is primary ingestion, and the other is secondary ingestion. Primary ingestion refers to a chemical being directly eaten by an employee. Many of you listening to this video presentation may find that that is a bit ridiculous, and it's rightly so. However, methanol or methyl alcohol is a clear liquid that can resemble water when placed in an unlabeled container. Methanol is used in many industries as an effective de-icing agent and can be transferred from a 55-gallon drum to a smaller container for immediate use. There have been numerous reported cases of accidental primary ingestion of methanol due to an employee mistaking the unlabeled container as water. Secondary ingestion is slightly different, although it's extremely related. Forgive me in advance, but I would like to pick on auto mechanics for just a moment. Mechanics are infamous for working in the shop around different types of chemicals such as ether, oil, gasoline, windshield cleaner, which contains methanol, and many other types of chemicals. I have personally observed many auto mechanics taking a lunch break in the shop while eating a sandwich with dirty, greasy hands. Now, to be fair, I have also observed derrick hands on drilling rigs eating their sandwiches while mixing mud chemicals in the hopper house, which is just as bad. The point that I'm trying to make about secondary ingestion is that something being ingested is contaminated with a chemical, and this could lead to overexposure of a chemical toxin. Finally, we will discuss injection as the fourth chemical route of entry. Injection pertains to how chemicals can be physically forced while under pressure into the body, such as a pressurized hydraulic oil line that cuts into an employee's body and injects the fluid, causing this type of chemical exposure. Toxicologists describe injection as a chemical route of entry pertaining to the exposure of a chemical to an opening in the skin or epidermis, such as a sore, an abrasion, or a cut. Both types would fall under the injection chemical route of entry, and special care should be taken to block chemicals from entering the body in such a way. Now that we have presented the background on chemical routes of entry to you, let's turn our attention back to the health hazards classification within the hazard communication GHS system. If you look on your screen, you will note that there are 10 health hazards classified under GHS. I will cover each of these health hazards in this presentation, but for right now, I will simply list each one prior to discussing them specifically. Acute toxicity, skin corrosion and skin irritation, serious eye damage or eye irritation, respiratory sensitizer or skin sensitizer, carcinogens, mutagens, reproductive toxicity or teratogens, specific target organ toxicity, single exposure, specific target organ toxicity, repeated exposure, and aspiration hazards. As we move forward to a discussion on each of these 10 health hazards and how they are classified and related to the hazard communication GHS standard, please keep in mind that the idea here is not to overwhelm you with these definitions and terms. Rather, the aim is to provide you with the necessary background to recognize these 10 hazards if they are seen on a chemical label or safety data sheet. And if you should happen to forget, at least you know that this information can be referenced again, and looking it up will not be a problem. Let's proceed by talking about acute toxicity. Acute toxicity refers to those adverse effects occurring following oral or dermal administration of a single dose of a substance or multiple doses given within 24 hours or an inhalation exposure of 4 hours. Substances can be allocated to one of 4 toxicity categories based on acute toxicity by the oral, dermal, or inhalation route according to the table on the screen. Please note that the lower the category number listed on any of the health hazard classifications, the more toxic or more dangerous a chemical is. For example, a Category 1 chemical will be much more dangerous to your health than a Category 3 chemical. I want to discuss a couple of terms you should know. LD50 is known as the lethal dose 50%, and the LC50 is known as the lethal concentration 50%. The LD50 may be expressed as a ratio of the chemical mass in milligrams per kilograms body weight of the test animal, which is usually a rodent of some sort. Moreover, the LD50 typically expresses chemicals in solid or liquid form. The lethal concentration 50% or LC50 has units relative to the gases they measure, which is a parts per million by volume or ppmv. As a general rule of thumb, the lower the LD50 or LC50, the more dangerous a chemical is in terms of acute toxicity. There are 4 categories of acute toxicity under the hazard communication GHS standard. Skin corrosion is the production of irreversible damage to the skin, namely visible necrosis through the epidermis and into the dermis, following the application of a test substance for up to 4 hours. Corrosive reactions are typified by ulcers, bleeding, bloody scabs, and by the end of observation at 14 days, by discoloration due to blanching of the skin, complete areas of alopecia, and scars. Histopathology should be considered to evaluate questionable lesions. Skin irritation, by definition, is the production of reversible damage to the skin following the application of a test substance for up to 4 hours. The tables listed on your screen describe the two categories under this health hazard classification pertaining to skin corrosion and skin irritation. Category 1 on corrosive substances is broken up into 3 subcategories: 1A, 1B, and 1C. A skin irritation chart is listed beneath the skin corrosion chart and represents Category 2 under this health hazard classification. As with acute toxicity, again, I would like to remind you that the lower the hazard category, the more dangerous the substance is to your health. Serious eye damage is the production of tissue damage in the eye or serious physical decay of vision following application of a test substance to the anterior surface of the eye, which is not fully reversible within 21 days of application. Eye irritation is the production of changes in the eye following the application of a test substance to the anterior surface of the eye, which are fully reversible within 21 days of application. There are only 2 hazard categories within this health hazard classification relating to serious eye damage and eye irritation. A key note to make with respect to this particular health classification is the difference between irreversible and reversible eye effects. Category 1 denotes irreversible effects upon the eye. Reversible eye effects from a particular chemical can be broken up into 2 subcategories, 2A and 2B. Subcategory 2A can be considered an eye irritant, while subcategory 2B should be considered only mildly irritating to the eyes. Respiratory sensitizer means a chemical that will lead to hypersensitivity of the airways following inhalation of the chemical. Skin sensitizer means a chemical that will lead to an allergic response following skin contact. Looking at the top chart on respiratory sensitizers, we find that there is only a single category, Category 1. There are 2 subcategories within Category 1, and they are Subcategory 1A and Subcategory 1B. Substances showing a high frequency of occurrence in humans or probability of occurrence of a high sensitization rate in humans based on tests are classified under Subcategory 1A. Substances showing a low to moderate frequency of occurrence in humans or a probability of occurrence of a low to moderate sensitization rate in humans based on these tests are classified under Subcategory 1B. Next, let's turn our attention to the bottom chart on skin sensitizers, where we find again that there is only a single category, Category 1. Subcategory 1A is a substance that shows a high frequency of occurrence in humans and or a high potency in animals that can be presumed to have the potential to produce significant sensitization in humans. Severity of the reaction may also be considered. Subcategory 1B will pertain to substances showing a low to moderate frequency of occurrence in humans and or at a low to moderate potency in animals that can be presumed to have the potential to produce sensitization in humans. Severity of the reaction may also be considered. A mutation is defined as a permanent change in the amount or structure of the genetic material in a cell. The term mutation applies both to heritable genetic changes that may be manifested at the phenotypic level and to the underlying DNA modifications when known, including, for example, specific base pair changes and chromosomal translocations. The term mutagenic and mutagen will be used for agents giving rise to an increased occurrence of mutations in populations of cells and organisms. The more generic terms genotoxic and genotoxicity apply to agents or processes which alter the structure, information content, or segregation of DNA, including those that cause DNA damage by interfering with normal replication processes, or which in a non-physiological manner temporarily alter its replication. Genotoxicity test results are usually taken as indicators for mutagenic effects. If I can now turn your attention to the chart listed on screen, you will see that germ cell mutagenicity has two hazard categories. Category 1 is broken down into Category 1A and Category 1B. Category 1 describes substances that are known to induce heritable mutations or to be regarded as if they could possibly induce heritable mutations in human beings. More specifically, Category 1A substances are known to cause heritable mutations, while Category 1B simply should be regarded as if they cause heritable mutations. Category 2 substances merely cause concern and may have potential to induce heritable mutations. It is important that we do not get lost in the weeds on germ cell mutagenicity, because there is a great deal of scientific probability assigned to each one of these germ cell mutagenicity categories. That is, even chemicals labeled as Category 2 should be considered quite dangerous because there's no absolute certainty in whether or not heritable mutations will occur. This concludes Part 1 of the Hazard Communication GHS presentation on health hazards. Again, I do not want you to feel overwhelmed by the examination of these health hazard classifications under Hazard Communication GHS. The point to be made here is that the lower the hazard category, the more likely a chemical substance will or may have a negative impact upon an employee in the workplace. Feel at liberty to contact me with your questions, and please move on to the second part of this presentation on GHS health hazard classifications.